Here we go. And I think we'll start off. And I'm super thrilled to welcome you all to this new format. And I want to give you a little bit of context why we're doing Tech Talks. So there was recently an article by the World Economic Forum that stated that the post-COVID era is basically going to be shaped in the most definitive way by technology, way more than any other force out there right now. So that's definitely something we need to tackle. And also we believe that technology has the ability to empower and aid change. So that's what we're all about here at Shake Up the Workplace. And that's also what Cisco, our partner for this event series, is all about. So we decided to do 6 talks throughout this year that will tackle the intersection of future of work and technology. And today we're starting out with one where we really need to see a shift from the sentiment of technology versus us humans towards technology aiding us, tech and humans. So this is the topic of artificial intelligence. And as guests for this topic, we have 2 people here today that have both been working with this topic for over 15 years. So I'd like to introduce you, Tarry. Some of you see him over there with the green background. And he is just an AI expert and AI researcher, and he will go into details about all his ventures he does. And also to guide him through the session and add his own expertise of 15 years is Eric, and he's part of the leadership team at Cisco. And they will kind of have a dialogue going on. And after that, we will join in a Q&A session, and you can get to ask all of your questions around artificial intelligence. I'm very sure they will be able to answer all of them. So, and before we really get into this topic, we've prepared a little questionnaire for you guys. So if you would grab your phones, or you can also do it in your browser, obviously, and go to menti.com and then input the code you can see, and then answer these 3 questions that we've prepared. So right now, before this session, where are you in terms of these 3 statements? So I know a lot about AI, so you have really deep knowledge. You're afraid of artificial intelligence, and you know what it means for you on a personal level in terms of your career and personal development. Yay, something is happening. Okay, cool, cool. Okay, 0 people afraid of AI, that's good. Oh no, okay, a bit. Awesome. I love how it's moving. Let's give it 1, 2, 3 more seconds. Okay. Interesting. Let's keep it a bit open. Someone is taking a bath. All right, okay. Things are still moving, but to give your general sentiment, so we're like okay-ish in terms of knowing what AI is. So that's also one of our topics. Our 2 guests will frame for sure a bit what artificial intelligence is to start us off. And there are some concerns, let's say 1.6 in terms of being afraid, having a fearful sentiment towards artificial intelligence. And there also seems to be a great knowledge about what it means for you personally. So that's definitely something we can look forward to then also for the discussion after the presentation. So without further ado, I thank you guys for voting, and I would like to give the stage to Eric and Tarry.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and to be here with all of you. Happy New Year to everyone attending the session or attending the recorded session. Happy New Year. All the best for you in this 2021. Terry, I have a question for you. What is your definition of AI on your side? How do you see AI, and how can you describe that in your own words? You're on mute.
First of all, thank you, Cisco, obviously, and Shake shake the workplace team for making this happen. I'm grateful to be here, and I'm really excited to see with this little survey that you just did right now that there's people looking at opportunity in AI, and unfortunately do not see AI as the big bear, but something that they can embrace. But rightly, as Eric asked, what is AI? Probably is a good way to step our toes into this sort of new domain and try to understand what AI is. Perhaps if I take, I have a slide I prepared for Q&A to try to see if I can address these questions through a slide as well. Let's try to sort of see what AI is, and that helps you get a bit of an understanding. So let me try to share my screen, and that kind of also sets the scene for this conversation, which me and Eric have been sort of calling each other and trying to understand how to address a couple of themes. And Eric is obviously going to be the gentleman who's going to be challenging me. And I look forward to hearing from all of you asking difficult questions. So this is a presentation I had given a couple of weeks ago, and I give occasionally in academia, but also with customers, to dispel sort of fears and give them a bit of understanding of what AI is. So let's see. This is me. It's really interesting. It was yesterday someone was sharing a link with me on that. Well, you've been chosen again, Terry, as one of the top 100 powerful people in AI, and I was like, okay, I think we should move beyond the hype. It's not about an individual. It's about the inclusiveness of people. That's when AI actually becomes successful. But myself, I have founded a bunch of companies, and that has been sort of my journey into AI. And hopefully by the end of this conversation, my journey will help you as well sort of carve out your own path, because that's what I did. It's in the beginning, it was a bit of a learning curve, and eventually today, right now, I'm swimming in the middle of this interesting ocean. I've been able to understand many things, but understanding in AI. So what is AI? I'll probably just move to a few slides here. So artificial intelligence, essentially, I'll probably just describe it as a technology that allows us to automate tasks based on what machines are learning. And that is a very simple way of explaining what AI is. If you can see here, for example, artificial intelligence, you can see here the yellow sort of big circle on your right is what the world has come to understand about AI. So when you say AI, you see there's a mathematical function I've sort of put up there, and AI should understand the world, which is where people get confused that AI is threatening, it is going to take over jobs, et cetera, because you tend to start thinking AI as an entity, as an alien entity that seems to be super intelligent, that has super intelligence and is better than human beings. But if you look a little bit sort of more into detail, for example, this brown circle, that is a field of machine learning which has actually popularized this concept of AI. So machine learning has been used for the past decades. Already for 3-4 decades, people have been using machine learning in finance for a long time, using all kinds of simple rule-based tasks and other tasks. When you look into this blue circle, deep learning, this is the sort of new field that emerged out of machine learning field that started popularizing that yellow big circle that you have here. Because deep learning started doing things which were really focused on automating the task of learning. And when you automate the task of learning, then you are essentially, as you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen, simple tasks like even 10, 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Federal Bureau of Investigation, but also here in Europe and, other organizations, people have used computer vision as to face detection, other things in the past. Back in the days, you used to have some person, a human in the loop, that used to do the necessary task of understanding how does a car look like, and then they throw it into a machine learning system, and the system will say it's a Pontiac, or it is some other a Dodge, or it's Volkswagen, or Renault, or some other vehicle. Deep learning, as the light blue sort of illustration I have sort of borrowed, is where you are actually eliminating the aspect of letting that, how do I understand what I'm seeing, the feature extraction piece. You just automate it all together. And that is that learning task that deep learning does, meaning it starts learning on itself to understand what am I seeing. So in simple definition, Eric, and to the rest of you, I think artificial intelligence is a field in which the art of learning is getting automated. And these sort of auto-learn features are being put into these systems. And that creates an illusion that artificial intelligence is suddenly becoming super intelligent. That is not the case. And I have a funny sort of joke somewhere in these slides, which I will share with you, some really interesting examples of that we are still far away from having some super intelligent machine being able to take over our jobs. So, for example, just very quickly, learning is where actually we will be centering this conversation around. The key of learning. So you could think of it this way: the machines have been taught to start learning things autonomously, and human beings, you and I, are learning things in our interesting ways. I have, for example, this area in my study, in my office. I pick up paper, I sketch things, and these things I'm retaining in my brain. And that's how I come up with new insights. That is something impossible for AI to do. AI needs existing data to do that. However, learning has allowed us to create autonomous vehicles. As you can see on the left, this is Sebastian Thrun. Sebastian Thrun, he did his PhD here in Germany, and then he moved to US, worked for Google, eventually created cars to drive themselves based on constantly failing as the car drove in the curves and all this different. This was a DARPA competition a long time ago, and it just continued to use the an advanced sort of concept of artificial intelligence to continue to learn about the mistakes it kept making until it started driving properly. And there today you see in cars like Tesla across on the road, you may see they're actually advancing that sort of technique and getting better and better on a daily basis. Diagnosing healthcare on the right is another area where the automation of learning has become super interesting. That is allowing people to actually increasingly use AI-specific techniques to diagnose, for example, breast cancer. I have an example, a real-world example, to let doctors, pathologists, oncologists, to use this as a tool to do their job much better and faster. It's not about replacing doctors, it's about helping them have another additional tool that is kind of, more like an intelligent box that helps you do your things faster. As I mentioned, learning to make money, as I say here, in high frequency trading, this has been used for decades already in the finance industry. And now, specifically around that, using algorithmic trading, people are increasingly using a field called reinforcement learning to start sort of, in foreign exchange sort of activities, derivatives, and trading. Traders use this very frequently. And they are also moving towards the field of deep learning. They've used machine learning in the past. And then on the right, and then I will stop here with these key examples. On the right, you see where machines are learning to translate. So basically, audio, video, all these information have been already being automated now. We are trying to learn the art of language, meaning how Swiss speak German versus how Germans speak German, how Austrians speak German. So now you're trying to put all the semantic context into machines to be able to understand what actually these sentences and words mean, which is probably the most difficult task in the field of AI, I would say, I would like to believe, because words spoken always have very different meaning. So we'll see how it goes, but the coming 3 to 4 years will be really interesting, where people will try to teach machines to learn how to understand and write interesting things. So this is where the AI's revolution has kind of taken us, Eric.
Good. Thank you, Terry. Isabel, do you have any question on the chat, or all good?
Yeah, I think so far we're all good. And
Okay,
as you said, for now, let's keep the questions in the chat, and then for the Q&A, we can, come on camera and chat all together.
Okay, super. Terry, when we both prepared this event, we both travel essentially on a worldwide basis for many years. We have been in the AI environment for more than 15 years. Some of the slides that we just saw were some of the one we were using many years ago, and because we didn't have the technology and the power of the technology to support some of AI functionality to the market. For us, there's two pillars. There's the impact of AI on the economy and the impact on the personal development of our own career. And I think for us, it's the two major pillars. Let's go for the economy first, and then we'll finish with the personal development, because I think it's also a very positive environment for the people, especially here in the workshop. What is your view in terms of the possibility, the opportunity we have when we look at the AI economy? But on a positive matter, we always take a look at it about, anonymization of information, personal confidential information, etc. But we never focus really on the possibility and the opportunity. What can AI bring in the economy on a positive manner? And I would like to have your opinion on that.
Perfect. I think I agree with you, Eric. We have kind of indeed, I still remember, I was looking at a slide I had prepared 15 years ago. In fact, there was some lecture I was giving in I don't know, Sweden. And I still remember I had, back in the day, cloud computing was keeping all of us busy. It was an emerging field. There was a lot of work going on all over the world. Cisco also spent huge amount of effort in trying to sort of also get into the cloud computing race, like all the other players. And I still remember people were still speaking about artificial intelligence, but still, I myself had prepared a slide and I had forgotten, because we were thinking, it's something very, very distant, emerging tech. Just something today, as you might want to believe, if someone's told you something about quantum machine learning or something, quantum computing, you would say, I don't know what that is. But this is how fast innovation happens, Eric. The data revolution, where today obviously it's also a thorn in the eye of all these internet companies, is actually what made this whole field of artificial intelligence possible. Because today, the more data people are providing to the internet, and the more easier it is to feed that data into your machine learning algorithms. But of course, enterprise adoption and opportunities of using AI is what we care about, because if we, when I say we, I mean, tens of millions of people around the world who want to be part of this AI economy, it's important to highlight the opportunities. It's important to highlight the economic impact. So I have sort of prepared something together, and I want to start with this sort of very simple and hopefully a more pragmatic but realistic sort of message. I kind of position, and I have an example to give you sort of in the end of this discussion, what I actually mean. It's kind of scary, because 4 years ago, when I sort of left my job, I was kind of very nervous. I knew I had to get into AI, but it was too new and too difficult and sort of, not easy to comprehend. And one man cannot change the world. But I did realize, being 4.5 decades, 25 plus years in the industry, that jobs continue to change. The nature of my employment has been changing. I've always hated it. because it's uncomfortable truth. It forces me to do new things, learn new things. But it's not a bad thing at all, actually. So from the positive perspective, this was a research actually done by a few researchers in Oxford University, and they were talking about what are the new jobs that are emerging in the market. And if you can see here in the spectrum, so I had created this infographic a few years ago. I think this is for 6 years ago or something. You can see here, the one in the red are the jobs that are being automated. But if you look sort of on the right, top right corner, the green is where interesting new jobs are emerging. And this is a 6-year-old infographic. I'll just share with you in a few seconds how that has transformed and things are becoming more realistic. And today, from energy and green energy and climate change is becoming so important for us to know that there are jobs that will be in the market today, which we don't know about, which we did not know about yesterday. And this is where, trillions of dollars literally are going to be invested in euros here, also in Europe. But automation has been happening for a long time, and much before AI sort of entered into this market. So we shouldn't start looking AI as the only disruptor to jobs. Jobs have always been sort of back in the 1850s when mechanical loom was introduced. People working in the cotton industry were scared because you had this mechanical loom in which you could sort of create from cotton you could create apparel, or at least the raw material for apparel. And this is how automation is kind of affecting today the current jobs that probably are less productive, more mundane, and technology is kind of learning about those. And just to give you a bit of a perspective of how AI is transforming the industries, I'll just give you a few examples. So, and you can think from your perspective. I think this is a small video. I'll just show you, this is one of the latest sort of, breakthroughs which people have achieved through a popular model, which OpenAI, an open source alliance that is funded by Microsoft, has actually created. So for example, if you were to be a web developer, the opportunity for you to do your job much faster is here today. So, previously you would spend maybe weeks to create your website. And today, let me just play this video while I keep talking, so keep this interactive. Today, instead of being a web developer, you start creating all these web pages and all these complicated things. You're just telling your machine through, this is AI in the background, you say, make a welcome to my newsletter, for example, and you make a small sort of, make it in red, for instance, and then it creates automatically these kind of messages for you. Looks simple, but it's kind of AI constantly being using all the knowledge that web developers, people who develop websites, have created and put all those information on the website, on the internet. And that's how the AI learned, and it's making the job of young people, maybe even other people who want to change their career, mid-career professionals, it becomes easier. You can see it creates code for you as well. So, and you don't have to worry about how all these things look like. All you do, you copy paste, make a small sort of changes, and you actually sort of created a web page. In the end, a simple landing page would look like this. I'll just fast forward to end, and then you have a simple web page. So, it's an opportunity for people who are in technology, or people who would not even have any background in technology today, to be able to enter into this market and be a web developer. Well, that's probably, it's interesting that the last sort of...
That's the best one.
Very current, your slides, Terry.
Yeah.
Are you coming back, just a question, because we have something in the chat. Are you coming back to this matrix with the job shift?
Yes, I am coming back to that as well.
Okay,
but I'm very happy to keep this interactive if someone has any questions.
Yeah, but then let's take it up then when we are back on this chart. I think Joe hit the very interesting point to add.
This is a simple example. If you're a communications expert, you've been creating all kind of, for example, I'm not a communications expert. Someone told me to write a great sort of introduction letter. I typically ask a copywriter or someone else to do this job. And this is, again, a tool which Google has been constantly improving to help you actually start already writing better and good-looking sort of texts. Makes it easier for you. So this is a great way for you to already advance and much faster to become a communications expert. So you shouldn't always think AI is a field only for PhD people. Oh God, if I'm not a researcher, I will not be able to do all this. All this intelligence has been now put into all these systems that will allow you to be a better communications expert. And similarly, for example, let's move into, this is something very important for all of us, whether you are an IT manager, whether you're a finance manager, marketing manager, maybe Eric, you might be also, in your job is, obviously to pull in sales. And, and now you're trying to quantify this information for your boss, for, the country or territory sales manager or sales organizations and large enterprises are organized. And previously, there might be like 50, 60 dashboards. I have to bring them all together, put it all into a CRM system, tell them which leads are quantifiable and qualified versus where am I wasting my time. And now imagine if you were to able to create a sort of a simple visual plot by just talking to it. And it seems magical, but at the back end, this is all, for example, if you're saying, give me a scatter plot, and this could be, you could think of it from your own perspective, scatter plot of my potential customers in this ecosystem. And then you're literally asking it, show me a scatter plot of wind speed at the y-axis and display the mean wind speed. And now these tools are becoming super sort of easy for you to use because you don't have to worry having them built. You can just sort of, get on by taking these new jobs, by making your life a lot easier because you already sort of mundane tasks has been taken over by a simple tool. And they will be entering into the enterprise industry as well. Let me just go into another example because there are many, and I thought that this was a good example to show, and then I'll stop because there's so many examples out there. The reason why I wanted to show this was because it's about the elegance of how things have started becoming so simple. Now it's easy to do. Oh yeah, people might say, well, Terry, it's nice, text and making all these things. I know, but people have started using things to AI to start making a very, very beautiful, elegant, and sophisticated web design. So it's saying, well, an app that has a navigation bar with the camera icon and photos and titles. It's like creating something like an Instagram platform you can create for your internal organization. And
yeah, Terry, let me just jump in. Sorry for interrupting you, but now the chat has become warm and the questions are coming in. And they were asking, Elise is asking which AI techniques are being applied to do this automated code generation that you're showing.
Very good question. I'm happy that you asked this question. So there is this technique. Now you just see this example why this video keeps playing. With just a bunch of typing what you want from this app, you've created like an Instagram app for yourself. You created an app based on an app that is at the back end. The language or the AI field that has been used is called language models. It's created by OpenAI. This is all based on GPT-3. So it's a sort of language model which OpenAI has released as licensed model to the rest of the world. And right now, as we speak, people are creating startups based on this model. So it's called GPT-3. For the question. I hope that helps. If you just search GPT-3, believe me, you will see all these apps that I'm showing you here because people have started using these.
Because Simon is also asking, sorry, yes. I'm so rude today.
No, please go ahead.
Because Simon was asking if the tools that you're showing are publicly available, if they can be tried out. So maybe you can share where you found them with us later, and then we can share with everyone.
I think, yes, I think there is, in fact, if you were to, I will share that with you, Isabel. But if you were to just say top 10 use cases of GPT-3 on search, on internet search, you will find all these examples. I'm not sure if they are publicly available for you to use. Some of these are just young people who just sat down and created something. But you will be able to access their websites to be able to understand more about these tools.
Thank you.
And this was a bit of a sort of an example of how in teaching, the world of teaching in online classes, in fact, their job is also becoming easier. As you can see, you're just asking questions and your tool is giving you answers. What does this software code do? And all these interesting things are being answered already by these tools. So these are the opportunities, Eric. And I know these are wonderful examples. I will spare sort of the details because otherwise we'll lose our focus. We need to go back and sort of draw ourselves back. We are at a point of probably answering Eric's or continuing to answer Eric's question as much as what Isabel asked me just now about will that infographic come back? So that infographic I had created 6 years ago, 7 years ago, based on a research from these Oxford University researchers. And now what is happening is AI is, well, I just wanted to sort of leave you with this example. So for those who are scared that AI is going to take over my job, I thought this was appropriate to end this interesting conversation by showing that as much as AI is super intelligent, it's also kind of dumb.
Then we're okay. We're in the first spot.
So you can see that the learning for a robot, it requires literally giving them thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours of learning, and they still fall all over the place. You wouldn't like your factory workers to fall all over the place if they were organizing your warehouse, right? So this basically sort of is the message that I keep telling you when I sort of shared with you the big orange circle that talks about artificial general intelligence, which meaning AI becomes smarter than human beings. I don't think that is something we should worry about. So I guess with this, you have a little bit of idea of the opportunities of AI. Eric, do you want to sort of go into some real world examples so you get a bit of a more realistic perspective, or you have some questions?
No, I think I would like to go on real world examples. First, Isabel, do you have any more question related to that, or are we coming back to the end?
I think we'll come back to those at the end. They're pretty cool, but I think there is more stuff to cover for more questions.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, especially when we talk about the enterprise, but we talk about it, Tarry and I, for quite a long time on WebEx, on the phone call. Healthcare and others enterprise environment are touched by AI today. Huh? This is our environment. We are talking about COVID and anything else. Give us real example, because a lot of people, when we talk about AI, are either afraid, they don't understand, or they don't see it in their daily life when it is used in the daily life today. Then perhaps give us some very interesting interaction example regarding what we are doing with this today.
Thank you, Eric. I think this is important because showing you all these examples as I did a few minutes ago is great, but you're just seeing something which someone else has created and you still feel, well, I don't think I will be able to do it. It takes time to dive in, and I hope by the end of this conversation, where my personal sort of journey will encourage you that it is possible, should help us dispel our own anxieties and move more positively. But let's take a look at the world of AI, how it's been transformed. Just took a few examples because they're through my eyes, if you could look through my eyes, I only see possibilities, but it takes a while before you start seeing possibilities inside your enterprise. So yes, it's correct. AI is being used literally, as I mentioned, already in decades, but now it's increasingly being used in literally all functions inside your industry. As you can see here, I just took this example from McKinsey. I see I've made a small typo here. I don't mean McKinney, but it's McKinsey. So AI is actually being adopted highest across all sectors today. in all verticals. So this is a really recent report, I think from November or December 2020. And here is the percentage of AI. So all these numbers, 24, for example, number of AI-based enhancements of products is 24%, which is pretty dramatic, actually, if you ask me. Literally, if you have an emerging industry, you will see 1% or maybe 2% adoption. So that is pretty dramatic. Manufacturing, if you look on the right, it's unbelievable. A few years ago, I was in Switzerland as well, working with some large, lift operators and lift manufacturers, elevator companies. And we were thinking of really interesting concepts. I'll just maybe give you a real world example of this interesting concept. For example, the world of mobility, and I'm sure you will appreciate this idea. In UK, they're working with, they already have some systems in London, for example, where you can literally start automating the task of bringing people from a certain area to the airport without having any human driving that vehicle. Now, I know that when I was having a conversation with a large lift company in Switzerland, I don't want to mention names, but you can imagine which company that is. And we were having this conversation around, so for example, the function of a lift, of an elevator, is just up and down, up and down. And that has been optimized. You can have two, if there's a huge building, you'll have two sort of lift systems, elevator systems, and that's it. Now, we started having a conversation. I was talking to a chief information officer, CIO, group CIO. And this is, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. I said, what if we change this, the concept of elevators going everywhere, not up and down, but going left, right, top, center, and in fact, creating sort of a mobility, providing an automated and safe and secure mobile way of transporting people across the building, across buildings, where you go and start, and probably expanding this world of mobility. So it's if you have this conversation in manufacturing industry, you know how the discussion always ends. They say, well, it's nice dreams, but we just have to focus on our margins, Terry. We're not going to do innovation, forget about it. Today, these things are becoming really, really very realistic. So if I look at 15% on manufacturing, I'm extremely encouraged. I have another example of a Swiss company to give you a little bit more perspective. Human resources, supply chain management, strategy and corporate finance, and these percentages are increasing. Look at risk, marketing and sales, service operations. So slowly and steadily, it's getting into all the product and service development and service operation functions. So just wanted to give you this perspective so you get a bit of an idea on that it's beginning to go into these, let's say, boring industries of manufacturing, and all these others are becoming super exciting for us to start revisiting the prospects of being in manufacturing, because they're becoming interesting jobs. Human resources is not even a boring function. You're just reading reports and employee productivity. You could use all these interesting tools to motivate your staff to be able to do better jobs, not by using these negative techniques to point them to their weaknesses, but showing positive behavior and reinforcing positive behavior using all kinds of interesting tools to encourage them. And we are using that as well. I'll show you some examples. And here, for example, ABB is a large Swiss company, as you may know, and they have actually really adopted adopting AI at a dramatic scale. In the last few years, they started this revolution a few years ago when they hired a CIO. I think it was from, if I'm not mistaken, Eric. I think he was an ex-Cisco executive. And he led this sort of huge revolution. And since then, a lot of big things have happened. I just wanted to sort of center around AI because we're talking about AI. And now, in order to move faster, with automation, they're collaborating with, for example, Covariant is a robotics AI company from Silicon Valley, and here they're beginning to use and partnering with these startups to actually further automate the task to make things easier for them in the manufacturing operations in order to bring productivity at a much higher pace. So these are large companies. But just wanted to give you an example of actually a real-world example in healthcare. So this is a project we did for a healthcare company in Frankfurt in Germany. This was a few years ago, and I thought this probably might also motivate you to actually start, dive into this field, because when you have a mission, something like fighting breast cancer, you would assume that, well, breast cancer is not something that affects a lot of people. Young women in Europe probably don't have that challenge, but it might surprise and shock you that in countries like Afghanistan, even young women in the age of 18, 19, 20 are impacted, are getting breast cancer. It's pretty dramatic. It's not just lifestyle or behavior, it's also the conditions that they're in, and that makes it very difficult for young women to actually, it's very confronting, especially in a country like Afghanistan, where if you're a young woman, your family is more focused on getting you, married into a good family. And I imagine what a shock it is for a family to have to deal with something like this. It's also a stigma. There's a lot of complicated sort of issues. So I was having this conversation with this healthcare company, management company in Germany, that worked with KfW. KfW is a large sort of German global development company that invests a lot of money in all these efforts. And then sort of, we said, okay, how do we solve this problem? So they had a lot of images, you take a lot of pictures of these breast cancer slides. These are tissue samples you take from breast. And essentially you want to understand where is breast cancer versus where it is not. So they had a lot of images, but there are just 2 or 3 oncologists in the whole of Kabul, or probably even in Afghanistan, which is dramatic because there's just 1 or 2 doctors out there. So, automation is something that is an extremely dramatic change for them if they're able to automate and, quickly and faster be able to diagnose, because diagnosis is very important there. A lot of young, middle-aged women are coming to you. So we worked with the doctors as well. The doctors flew here also to Germany. I had a lot of workshops together with my team. And essentially, I'll just keep it simple because, we don't have much time. I know we just have 15 minutes. We were able to put these images into an AI system, and we improved upon these models, and were able to provide a prototype that made the oncologist be able to just put those images, and within a matter of seconds, they could get a diagnosis. This was previously taking weeks. They used to send these images to the doctors here. The doctors, even in Switzerland, there's an organization actually that works together with this organization. So it was actually a project started out of Switzerland in 1996. But you cannot rely on pathologists all the time and wait while this woman is taking 6 weeks, and probably these young women also die. So moving from weeks to a matter of seconds was a dramatic shift. And this is an example I would leave you with. Yeah, and I'll just leave you here with the projects that are out here. So it's touching all industry verticals, whether it is depression, whether it's agriculture, human resources, climate change, manufacturing, even design and art. It's expanding dramatically, but I'll just provide a link if you want to take a look at it. So,
super interesting, Terry. And I think there was a great question in the chat from Dan, and he said, if you had an inspiration for AI in a use case, where would you go? Where would you start your research? About existing solutions, trends. Where do you need to go? And I think this is leading over to the part of personal development, engagement, and being personally part of this AI economy.
Very good question, Dan. I think I'm just trying to pick up a paper because that's how maybe it might help you. What I do is, let's say if there's something passionate, if you're passionate about ethics, if you are passionate about, fighting discrimination at work or biases and racial inequality, which is also very close to my heart, as much as I believe that AI should be used for human development. I start with this. So I do research. I go online. There are a few research platforms like Archive. It's a free pre-publishing platform. People publish their research there. We've published a lot of research as well. If you go to deepkapha.ai, But I just go and start reading what people have done. So typically what I do is a very simple step is instead of going into a specific problem that a researcher has solved, I take a step back and I say, is there someone, because there are people who already done some research in the past. I always start at the top and saying, I want to find I want to have a survey research. Let me look for a survey research. What survey research means is in academia, people always sort of evaluate what has been done so far. And I start at the top and finding, let's say, breast cancer. And such survey tells me what people have done, which has worked, what has not worked. And then I start narrowing my search into an area that is close to me. And then I can very quickly jump from at very macro level quickly to the problem that I want to solve. And it takes a bit of a while, but once you get a hang of it, you can very quickly jump into the specific problem, including software which people are actually releasing online all the time. So you can actually take their work and actually expand upon their work. I hope that helps. I know it's a very short sort of answer, but once you get a hang of it, it really starts helping you move forward.
May I ask just one follow-up question? Thanks.
Sure.
Hello, by the way. Thanks. Very inspirational, what you all been talking about. But when you talk about this basic research, are there some certain buzzwords or certain terms that you would include in such research, just to narrow the wide field of AI down to certain specific terms?
Yes, I mean, we could do it right now. What is on your mind? What is it that you want to solve? Well, anyways, this is an example.
I'm really interested in how AI can support quick analysis of business problems.
Okay, that's still a bit too high level. Business problems, as in from strategy consulting.
Specifically in the financial sector of small, medium enterprises.
Wonderful. If you just search business process management, BPM, as you know, is a field where people have been working in for the past few decades. Every year, publication journals actually start looking at how AI has been sort of increasingly being used in, the typical RACE, from reactive to, those kind of models I'm sure you're aware of. So if you're looking at your business process improvements, people from business domain are also viewing and seeing how can I use AI to improve my business operations. For example, finance management. Let's talk about contracting. So procurement and contracting is a big and a large and laborious field. Now, if you were to go to your chief procurement officer, CPO is still hopefully a job out there. I haven't interacted much with CPOs lately, but the procurement department has a lot of people working. They have like some large companies like ABB or Allianz or any other company. They have like hundreds, if not thousands of vendors who have contracts with these companies. If you were to take all the contract documents, you were able to use a language model to understand and ask simple questions about, contract expiry and looking at, trying to create your financial portfolio analysis based on how does, these companies who are right now vendors to our ecosystem affect my, financial viability. Then you can start segregating into various tasks, going to companies that have had fines, have been operating in different areas that doesn't work with our policies. So you can go and start refining this question, and you can give a very, very interesting answer, and still provide an interface for procurement management to say, now we have put all your procurement documents and contracts into this little tool. For example, the tool that I showed you, GPT. You could also do that with that, and then you say, show me vendors when the contract is expiring from 1st November until the end of 2021. That already prints out the list. And then you can ask simple questions like, can you do also a search and talk about these vendors and if they are still compliant with our corporate social responsibility, and they're not working with other regions which affect our reputation. So it's really, really the things that managers sit and sit in the boardroom and start asking questions to their business unit managers could be asked by this dashboard if there's a collective measure to bring this intelligence of data. So it all starts with zeroing down your business problem. And believe me, a language model already can give you a lot of intelligence because there's so much data already available inside companies.
So Terry, this comes back to, if I may jump in, you guys, quickly. Isabel, the other one, had a very great question before when we were chatting about the web development automation. And this ties in here nicely as well, is what happens if the user is kind of entering an unclear input or an unclear question that the system cannot parse? What happens then?
It all depends. You know, if it's almost like you're asking your chatbot to not only answer to your questions but also produce some results, right? This is what the functionality of this tool is. So if you are probably, you know, just saying, you know, irrational things like blue circle on the toe, the left toe of, you know, this puppet. And what happens is it's something that is inconceivably, you know, it's kind of a very irrational thing to ask. I mean, a blue circle on the left toe of a puppet is not something that we'll be able to conceive. Probably, maybe it might still be able to create something for you, just for you to laugh. But you can have a very simple binary answer to that by saying your request is not valid, or, you know, maybe answer and help you, provide you a support tool. Did you mean that? Did you mean this? So I think there are ways to navigate it, but it's all in your hands. Like I said, you could also just say, well, it's not a question that's relevant to web development. But people have done that as well. It's a very good question, by the way, because when these tools started emerging in the market just a few weeks ago, people started asking irrational questions to test the intelligence of these systems, which I keep saying that, let's not worry too much about intelligence. These are dumb machines. They just have learned about data, which we have generated ourselves as human beings. So if we ask a question which has not been asked before, they would be just as dumb as a dumb terminal and will not be able to answer. So, but it's a fair question. The validity of a tool like this is definitely you need to check, because especially when you're putting this into your enterprise. But you shouldn't worry. I mean, I don't think a procurement manager is going to ask questions like, "What is the finance of my window?" or some other irrational sort of sentence, you know. So we hope that as much as the machines are getting smarter, we will keep asking logical questions to these machines. Cool. I don't know how much time we have. I'm really, it's fascinating actually to actually sort of, you know, have these questions, but I just want to go a little bit faster to answer Eric's question as to the industries, which also sort of, you know, gives you a bit of an idea. So this is what I had created a few years ago, almost 6-7 years ago. And green computing, obviously the next 4 years with the new administration in the US, they're joining back into the Paris Accord, et cetera, is going to also create sort of new opportunities for us. But I've just created sort of these new jobs. And many of these are already sort of existing functions inside, you know, energy companies that are looking to use wind, solar, water, et cetera, these sort of means to create sort of new means of, you know, generating a carbon neutral, even carbon negative kind of a future for all of us. So green engineering, I'm calling it green engineering. I don't know if there's a term like that out there, but green engineering is where you can already see it's already these are the jobs that are ready to be filled today. I won't go into details in any of these, but just take a very simple example at the bottom of this slide. For example, you know, 3D printing soil expert. Many companies inside Switzerland as well. I've been in Switzerland quite often. Companies like Clariant, Lonza, a bunch of other companies, they're already doing a lot of interesting things. You know, there might be interesting ways. Vertical farming is a very, very popular field. And, you know, not looking at hundreds of squares of sort of acres of field, you know, reducing that to 99.9% of creating vertical farms to have a sustainable sort of, you know, way of farming is a great way to reduce the ecological footprint of what we are doing today. So there's a lot of interesting things, and AI is being used in that as well. So this is one green engineering. Let me just go quickly through these. Brain computing, sort of neuroscience used to be a very academic area 10, 15 years ago. But today, with companies like Neuralink, which Elon Musk has launched, but a lot of other companies that are becoming, these are the interesting jobs that are out there in the market, to start understanding how to understand your thoughts, understand your wishes, do all kinds of things. For example, let me just give you an example here, brain fingerprint for travelers. We are now saying, oh, we should have people COVID and all those vaccination. We will not allow anybody to come in because COVID, if you don't have a vaccination. But there are better ways to actually do a better sort of understanding and scanning and imaging of people's plans of traveling. It's important to understand the large context of why people want to go from place A to place B. Just as an example, crime prevention algorithms. So there are many, many areas that'll, and some will be controversial for sure for a while, because not every area can get adopted. But unfortunately, thankfully, there are regulatory authorities to make sure that we only have technology that is responsible and that is sustainable, not just sort of going blindly into that.
Terry, let me just jump in. Looking at the time, people who are joining our sessions know we tend to go longer than the hour. That's why they're joining to get this in-depth view. But I think Eric had these two pillars in the beginning that he wanted to ask.
Yes.
So,
Eric, was this any useful with the questions you asked? I know, we went all over the place trying to understand adoption from industry perspective, but also from jobs perspective.
Yeah, I think mainly for me, it's the jobs. I think if you look at the own personal development of people around the world, I look at my own child who are doing at the university in business, but at the same time, she learned how to code. You see, these are the thing you and I, when we were at school, we didn't go through because it was not in the book for us. And these kind of things I think are changing. I think people should not be scared of that. They should see that as an opportunity. For me, it's very close to my heart because I have young adults at home. But if I look at every people that I talk to, either here in Switzerland or globally, everybody is seeing the thing changing. But I think they should see that in a very positive manner and not to be afraid of changes. Human beings by default are afraid of changes. How can you, in your own words, tell us not to be afraid and use that in a positive way for our career or our personal development?
Yeah.
Because before having our career development, we have to have our own personal development, who will become a transformation in our career. How do you see that?
Absolutely. I think that is probably the most important and the most, I guess, the most impacting sort of way to actually go and deal with these challenges is to first, how do we unlock ourselves and free ourselves from these anxieties? Because a new technology where I don't know where to start is something I also still, even today, I face on a daily basis. I try to use the simple principle of what do you want to solve? What are the best path to actually learn it? Today, back in the days, of course, Eric, internet in our age, in our time and age was just emerging. It was very difficult to find information online. So I knew. And still it helped me, but I realized that increasingly it's becoming easier for folks today to actually reach out, even if you're alone, living in a small cantonment in Switzerland or anywhere else in the world. You can actually go and sort of start planning your career and learning path based on some searches that you can do on internet. That is something which is dramatically different than 20 years ago. But still, I think it's a very, very good question. Investing in your future is something, it's not something I always said, okay, I want to invest in my future, especially when you have a stable job. You tend to forget, you start focusing on, living your life, you get married, you have children. But unfortunately, in the coming years, people already know in the future of jobs is not going to be a job you will be keeping for the next 30 years of your life. We all know this. We have to tell our children, but also, strangely, we have to also tell it to ourselves, because it affects us as well in our mid-career. When today, I mean, let's be honest, it's not some theoretical exercise, guys, we are doing here today. Corona has clearly shown that no job is safe. It's not even about AI. So, the world keeps changing. I just wanted to kind of give you a bit of a perspective on sort of my own journey. Maybe I hope this helps, because this is how at least I tell myself and I remind myself, Terry, you were able to get out of that mess back in the troubling times. You can still do it today. And that is my only sort of support. I can talk to a lot of people. Everybody has his own fights. I know you have your own fights and your battles as well. These were my fights and battles. I just sort of listed out my own journey, where the red is the problems. They will keep coming at us. We don't have no control of them. So red is something you have no control of. Green is where things are emerging. So back in the days, internet was very nascent. This is from my time. Infrastructure, data, these are the things that made companies like VMware, Cisco, EMC, all these things. Back in the days, that was the game in town, but not even then. They were still emerging. And then this is like the last, let's say, approximately 20 years, a little over 20 years of what happened in the industry. At the bottom, you see at the scale is how emerging technologies start maturing. But like I said, if you are at some point of time at the emerging tech right now, what AI is, you wouldn't see that as something you want to be investing your future in, because I don't know what that is. I don't even know if that'll pay off. Why the hell should I waste my time learning that? That's the feeling I had as well, myself. So this is my path. So I was good at software development 20 years ago. I was great at software development. I was good in databases, and I was a beginner in infrastructure, which is a really, really young field in 1999. VMware was a small company with 20 people. I used to have one-on-one conversation with one of the key first employees of VMware company. I don't know if you've heard of. It's today, sort of does a lot of hybrid cloud infrastructures for companies. I'm sure all companies have that platform. But if you look at just look at this path I kept taking to keep investing. So every time I saw a new emerging field, obviously I took a calculated bet, and then I said, which are going to be large impacting fields? So very simple blocks, virtualization, cloud computing, and then, and as you can see here on the right-hand side, all these small things which Google, Amazon, Facebook are developing, which is enabling AI to become popular with people, is where I started paying attention, some 10 years ago, and 5 years ago, it started becoming really interesting. So you can see here, my goal was to become a master. That was my goal. It still is you always start as a beginner. Every journey is a beginner's journey. And that's how I started off. And I'm not saying I'm a master, but I do believe that I have mastery of some areas. And that is how I started working on my career. Now, that's sort of my journey in which I spent, and more actually with internet, things started becoming a lot easier for me, fortunately. But I mean, this is what I think you should be focusing as well. What is your next step? I'm just painting a future now. I'm just painting a future until 2040. Okay? I know no one cares about what's going to happen in 20 years. As humans, that's also a way of protecting ourselves from, big dangers, because if you worry about 2050, you would not be able to live your life healthily. But let's just look at the immediate next step. In the next 2 to 3 years, where do you want to be? So, there will be some crises again. The ones in the red are some things I've just sort of, I hope they will never happen. Student loan crisis is a big problem across the world. But let's just say that we are able to get rid of, do a lot of rain and climate AI, and things become easy. We don't go into any environmental calamity, at least not man-made. But opportunity is where you should be looking at. These are the new fields that are emerging. Today, as we are at the crossroads, you should plot this chart for yourself. Where are your skills today? Where are you as a master or a professional or a beginner? You can plan this out as well. For example, like Dan was asking a question, if you are able to chart your path within 2 to 3 years, you will become an expert and a master in your field. Just want to end this with a positive note, because as much as, the world has been full with so much of disinformation in the last few years, I think together we are able to continue. And as you can see here as well, economies have grown. And we shouldn't feel ourselves being at the have-nots, people who have been disadvantaged. If you continue to keep investing, you will see that economies bounce back. There will be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of new jobs, and then you would be ready to be part of that. Only then the recovery sort of takes place. I mean, in the next 5-6 years, there's going to be a lot of recovery happening as well. Fortunately, through European Central Bank, and lots of investment is coming. But I think so. There is going to be technology that will continue to grow, as you saw in those green blocks as well. It is kind of almost disconnected from what happens to the world economically, or climate, or some other sort of problems that the world is facing, like humanitarian or pandemics. So if you focus and continue to keep focusing on technology, I think we will be able to grow. Why I do believe that this is the right path, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, is AI. When I say the right path, AI, the field of scientific computing and commercial computing has come together. It has happened. I know 20 years ago we used to talk about it. That's when I used to write about AI without even knowing that it will impact, because I never believed that it will come. I never thought that this huge compute capacity, which high HPC, high-powered computers people have, these mainframes, that they will be at yours and mine disposal. Today, it is possible for you to just plug it into a question, take a question, plug it into a cloud computing environment, and it gives you an answer. Even helps you even build your portfolio. It is the moment of truth. Whether we like it or not, it is what is going to happen. And let's sort of look at it positively. It is going to fuel the growth. This convergence has allowed us to actually participate in learning about these new skills. So hopefully, with that, I hope you're able to sort of look at the future a little less sort of scared, and a little bit more sort of positive and optimistically, because that's what we need. Honestly, every day I wake up and I sit in my office here. I just think, what am I going to do today? And I start actually doing the same sort of my research. If there are projects that we're doing, and I always start small, start as a beginner every day actually, and then try to see if I can understand some things more, and then start again tomorrow.
Thank you, Terry.
I'm sure if there are any questions, or Eric, you have any questions?
No, I think the message is for Isabel. Do we have any question from the crowds, from the chat on this?
Yeah, I think one that I would like to throw out there, but we should maybe cover in a written form after, is you started going into that a bit, Terry, in the end, the immediate AI trends going on. And if there's any podcasts, blogs, and other resources you can recommend. So I think this will do just in a written form, and send it off with the recording as well. And then Jyoti also said something that ties in with the last moment of truth chart you shared. And she says, Harari says the difference between the industrial times and now is that the convergence of infotech and biotech. So I think this also plays into this chart here as well, multiplying the possibilities. But I really like what you said about starting as a beginner every day and mapping these skills. I think that was something very tangible to take away. And I think we never look at our skills in this way. I know Ola, who's also part of the Shake Up team, is a very big fan of learning. So I think this is right up your alley as well. And before we drop off, if there's any more questions, let's do it. But also, I will sneak away, Terry, your sharing, and I want to go back to our Mentimeter. And I think we can do the next one. So while we come to close off this session, and I thank you all for being so engaged and for all the great questions. So let's hit that Mentimeter again and see where we are after this 70 minutes of Terry and Eric.
And perhaps, Isabel, why people are entering the after session information. I think for me, there's two things, if I can add to what Tarry has said, uh, and having young adult as and Cisco is also empowering a lot of young generation within our structures, and we are moving along a lot internally as well as a global service provider of technology for the internet. Agility for me is very important. The people has to reinvent themselves, not to be afraid. It's not to, we don't need to change. We need to be curious, to be agile, to ask questions. Um, and I saw often Tarry recommending this and this. Yes, it is there. It's out there on the internet. Just be curious. Just go out there and request information. And as I also say to my kids, is that if you see a news on Donald Trump, try to find the news on different channels as well, because you will not have the same definition from Joe Biden inauguration here from a right, center, left, or a European or Asian. Be curious, go out there, challenge yourself, be agile. And I think you're going to get through these new services and this new technology upcoming in the next 10, 20, 25 years. It will continue to change, but it's positive in my view.
Thank you, Eric. So in closing, let's look at the numbers. So we jumped considerably from a 2.6 to a 3.4. Sometimes it was a 3.8. So definitely, I think in terms of being afraid, we stayed almost a little bit on the same level. I think some of the super smart examples you showed were kind of creepy, maybe, but it's still a low number out of 5, I guess. We can deal with it. And also what it means in terms of personal development, we really could help people out to, I think, give them a starting point for this journey. And well, to close this off with 1 minute left, because actually our sessions always go 75 minutes. I would like to thank you, Tarry and Eric, for being here today with us. And as I said in the chat, we will share all resources that Tarry showed, that Eric has. They both have tremendous insight of 15 years in this topic. We will share them afterwards as well. So maybe this will give you a jumping off point for your career and development in AI. And just a little bit of advertisement for Shake Up the Workplace. We will have our next virtual coffee in just a few days in the beginning of February, and the lovely Alexander will be hosting it. So with this, I'd like to close and thank you all for your time today, and we hope to see you soon for the next Tech Talk.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take
Have
care,
a wonderful day.
there, huh?
Yes, take care.
Yeah. Cheers. Be safe.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.